I'm Lloyd Holliday, and this is the Cost of a Thing podcast. Thanks for listening in today. So what happened to that great standard of living that we used to enjoy here in America in the 1960s and even into the 1970s? Well, that's what the Cost of a Thing podcast is all about, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here. Okay, today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call Californization and how insidious the process of Californization is and how it has lowered our standard of living over the past 50 years or so here in the United States and in all the Western countries, including Europe, Canada, Australia, and many others. New Zealand, where there are now super overpriced real estate and houses. And what I mean by Californization is where prices of real estate and houses go up in one area to an extreme level, a bubble level, and then the people who live there sell those houses that they paid maybe many times less than they are selling them for, and now they take that bubble equity, that big bag of free money that they didn't do anything for, they didn't work for it, it just came to them because their house went up in value. The value of their house was inflated by the government. The money was inflated to them by the government. So they sold it, got this big bag of equity money. Can be 100,000, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how big that equity bubble is in that certain area. Well, they take that money then and move to other states where prices are still low and based on real people's wages and savings. And they start using that free money they got, that free equity money, and they buy up the real estate in these other areas. Now, this has been happening over the last 30 years or so, maybe more. And the reason why I call it Californization is because I think it started in Southern California. That's where the first big bubble was blown. Now it's happening other places. People took that money from Southern California. They would take it to Oregon. They would take it to Washington. Buy up the houses around those areas, in the nice areas of Oregon and Washington, Seattle suburbs, Portland suburbs. Until now, Oregon and Washington, and even Nevada, maybe even parts of Florida. And of course the Upper East Coast is all included in this Californization. New York, Boston, they're all overpriced. So now all those areas are Californized, so they're now selling their houses, many people, and moving out to other areas. They're moving out to Texas, they're moving out to Idaho, they're moving out to Wyoming, they're moving even into the Midwest. And they're driving those prices up because this free money that they got that was never worked for just drives the prices up and up. And now they're beginning to be Californized out in Texas and Idaho and these other places. When you go there to buy land, now it's driven up. Houses too. And one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast on Californization is I am out here on my summer RV trip, and I am witnessing Californization firsthand. I am passing through Twin Falls, Idaho, and Idaho Falls, Idaho in the last several days, and there is a building boom going on. I can see house after house, tract after tract of new homes being built, big homes. Some of these look like they're 3,000 square foot houses on acreages, some of them on smaller lots, but it's a building boom. And this brought to mind what's happening, and I know it's happening. It's Californization. It's people coming from other states who have sold their overpriced houses, and they've brought that bag of money out here to Idaho. And I see it going on. Just an unbelievable amount of construction of homes and businesses. I see a lot of businesses being built, strip malls, and it looks like just about any available lot is being built on as I drive through these areas. And what I am witnessing here is exactly what I'm talking about. It is Californization. for sure. This new construction is not coming from the vibrant Idaho economy, not coming from selling potatoes. This is coming from those huge bags of money, free money that people got for doing nothing. They just sold their house and waited for it to go up in value, and then they sold their house. Now they're using that money to come out here to these lower priced areas, and they're driving the prices up here for the locals out here. And Californians and people that do that get a bad reputation in these areas, and they're not very well liked by the local people because they know that's what's going on. And this is happening not just here in Idaho where I am right now. It's happening in Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and many other states. They're becoming Californized right now. And I first brought this topic up of Californization a little over a year ago when I did my first podcasts on the cost of a thing in my Housing Super Ripoff podcasts. There's part 1 and part 2. So if you want to hear more about this in more detail, some other things about the housing bubbles in the United States and how it has lowered our standard of living, you can go listen to those podcasts. And they're easy to find on my channel page. You just go to the Super Ripoff playlist, and it'll even be listed at the end of this video. So that's the process. In a nutshell, people in the super overpriced extreme bubble real estate states, such as California, New York City area, Boston, Seattle, Portland, they sell their houses there. They've gone up hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. Take that hundreds of thousands of dollars that was never earned, and they go to the other states, drive up their prices there. So the people there have to pay more now for their houses and their rents, and their house prices go up. The people that live in Idaho and the Midwest and other states where this is happening, Texas, the local people who have to work for their money now have to compete with this free bubble equity money, this big bag of hundreds of thousands of dollars of free bubble equity money. It all started in Southern California around the early 70s. It started where the prices of real estate in Southern California were going up. Lots of people were moving there. There was a big demand, and there was a weather premium where California real estate was worth a little more because you had this nice weather down there. And of course, they'd get about a 10% premium over other places in the country because of the nice weather. Well, now that 10% premium is 5 times, sometimes even 10 times the price of that same house in other areas that have not been Californized yet. So Californization, it spreads. It's kind of like a disease, a terrible disease. It's like a cancer on our country. And it's spreading as we speak to these other states so that people there will soon have to pay several times more than they're paying now to have a home to raise their family in or to rent a place to live. And this is why it's so insidious, because it just raises the price of the houses, and that's your biggest expense, really, your housing. And if your housing is very high priced, then you don't have as much money to spend on the other things you need. Your standard of living begins to go down, and that's what we're feeling here in America right now. The young people, many of them, even if they graduated college, and if they live in one of these expensive areas, which most people do, those are the most populated areas, they can't even afford to buy a house. They can't even afford to rent an apartment. They have to get roommates, 4 or 5 roommates. They roommate up. And you see it on the TV show, Friends, things where they have to roommate in these little apartments in these crammed places. And then there's tiny houses. There's all kinds of strange things going on because the young people cannot afford houses and rents in these super inflated Californized areas. And I believe this Californization is contributing to the youth unrest that we're seeing today in our society, because those young people would normally be starting a household and starting a family in their early 20s. Instead, they've been blocked out of that market, blocked from doing that by this Californization. Some of these starter homes in these bubble areas can be $700,000, and that's not a very nice house for that amount. And so they're They can't start a household. They can't buy a house. They can't start a family as easily. Many of them anyway. Some are. There's higher income people always out there that are, but I'm talking about the average guy. They're having trouble starting that household and family. And as a result, many of this young generation now, the younger generations, are lost. They don't have a direction. The direction most people would take through history is to start a family, and that would give them purpose in their life, raise that family. So then they go to work, pay for the home and the raising of that family. Well, a lot of them can't do it because of Californization. Housing and rents are just so expensive, they can't form that household. So they can't even think about getting married and starting a family. So this lost generation is basically like they're aimless wandering zombies. They don't know what to do. They're purposeless. They're in limbo. And they do things that then they go down the wrong roads, the wrong paths, bad paths for them. They get into things like drugs, and they might get sucked into cults or some political groups looking for purpose in their lives. And really what's going to make people the most happy in life is to have a family and raise that family and work toward raising that family the best they can. Because of Californization, many in these younger generations are not able to go down that path. It's not available. It's unaffordable. And if you want, like I said, to know more about why these house prices went up and how the local governments and the federal government contributed to that, go ahead and listen to my Housing Super Ripoffs, Part 1 and 2, and you can know why your house prices are so high in your area and why you're paying so much for rent. And maybe we can all do something about that, because nothing is being done about it right now. Nothing is being done about it. As long as this process is allowed to carry on, house prices are going to keep going up and rents are going to keep going up. And the portion of money that you pay every month out of your budget for rent and housing is going to go up, up, up. In many places, people now pay 50% of their monthly income to pay for their housing. Way too high. That's supposed to be about 25%. So now they have less money to spend on the other things they need and want. So that is how Californization lowers our standard of living, and has done so over the past 50 years or so. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up with that, and I want to leave this off with, how do you know if you're in one of these bubble areas or not? Can you tell if you're getting ripped off for housing or rent? Well, it's pretty easy to tell, and here's the rule of thumb that I've come up with for that. Because if you go over all of history in Western civilization anyway, the price of a house should cost, an average house in an area should cost about 2 to 3 times the average worker's income in that area. So if the average worker in an area is making about $50,000, and I'm talking about a single person, not a family, a single person, a guy, a woman making $50,000, well, she should be able to get a house, a nice average house in a decent neighborhood in that area, for between $100,000 and $150,000 if she's making, or he or she is making, $50,000. If the prices of the average house in that area is more than 2 to 3 times that average worker's income, you know it's a ripoff. It's been Californized. It's a super bubble. In a lot of these areas like San Francisco and San Jose, we know that some of those houses can be 10 times the average worker's income. They can be maybe 15 and even 20 times the average worker's income. Well, that is an extreme example of Californization. And as for rents should not be more, for a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment, they shouldn't be more than about 25% of an average worker's monthly income. 25%. If it's more than that, it's a bubble. Myself, I stay away from those areas because they are a ripoff. You're going to have a low standard of living. Try to live there on an average wage. The only way you can live in those areas is to make a lot of money. 2 professional incomes, and maybe you can live there okay. Thank you for listening in today. And until next time, this is Lloyd Holliday signing off.